Many congratulations. Very good match, very good performance tonight. What pleased you most about that against Grigor?
Well, I knew that it was going to be difficult with the conditions. I mean his style.
7 Grand Slams, youngest career Grand Slam in history, 12 wins from 12 to start 2026, a 6-2, 6-1 destruction of Arthur Fils in under an hour at an ATP 500 final, a week after beating Djokovic in Melbourne. The tennis world is already calling him the greatest of all time. There's just one problem. Djokovic has 24, Federer has 20, Nadal has 22, Alcaraz has 7. He has not broken a single major record that defines the GOAT conversation, not one. And yet, the legends who built those records are the exact same people lining up to say his name first. Roddick said it out loud after Melbourne. Carlos Alcaraz is now squarely in the company of Edberg, Becker, Wilander, Lendl, Connors, McEnroe, Agassi at 22 years old. Agassi, 8 Grand Slams, career Grand Slam, one of only 6 men in history to achieve what Alcaraz just did, called him something that has never been said about any modern player. A flying saucer. While everyone else is flying a plane, Alcaraz is changing altitudes, reversing direction, and somehow getting faster doing it. Rick Matchy, the coach who developed Venus Williams, Serena Williams, Maria Sharapova, and Jennifer Capriati, posted publicly that Alcaraz has raised the bar and jolted the sport like no other. Then the man with 24 Grand Slams crossed the net in Melbourne, looked a 22-year-old in the eye and said, "What you've been doing, the best words to describe it is historic, legendary." The greatest champion that the court had ever seen on his own tournament, calling someone with 7 slams legendary. So here is the question the entire tennis world is fighting about right now. Does greatness live in the numbers, or does it live in what the greatest players who ever lived say when they watch you play? Because right now, both answers are pointing in completely different directions. Djokovic owns the records, Alcaraz owns the moment. The people who spent their careers building those records are increasingly sounding like they believe the moment matters more. Today we're going through exactly what they said, exactly what they saw, and exactly why the verdict from inside the sport is shifting faster than anyone expected. February 1st, 2026, Rod Laver Arena. Carlos Alcaraz defeats Novak Djokovic 2-6, 6-2, 6-3, 7-5. 7 Grand Slams, career Grand Slam complete, done at 22 years and 272 days old. To understand why that number matters so much, here is the list of men who completed the career Grand Slam before him in the Open era. The names above him tell the full story. Rod Laver, 24 years old, Rafael Nadal, 24 years and 101 days. Roger Federer, 27 years and 303 days. Novak Djokovic, 29 years and 15 days. Andre Agassi, 29 years and 68 days. Alcaraz beat every single one of them to it by nearly 2 full years. He did it in just 12 major campaigns. Nadal needed 20. At the same age, Alcaraz now holds 7 slams. Djokovic had exactly 1. Opponents understand the scoreboard. What they struggle to explain is everything happening between the points. The reactions after Melbourne came fast. These weren't polite social media congratulations from people looking for attention. These were considered specific, almost reluctant admissions from people who have spent their entire lives watching elite tennis, and who know exactly how rare it is to say what they said. Martina Navratilova, 18 Grand Slams, arguably the greatest women's player in history, watched the final and wrote, "You make it look easy and oh so much fun." Billie Jean King called him truly remarkable. Brad Gilbert, coach, analyst, one of the sharpest tactical minds in the sport, immediately put the career Grand Slam at 22 into context for his millions of followers. Then Rafael Nadal, sitting in the stands at Rod Laver Arena, watching his fellow Spaniard complete the same collection it took him 24 years to build. Nadal posted his congratulations and was physically present in Melbourne for that moment, the greatest clay court player in history, watching the next chapter begin from the front row. None of those reactions mentioned 7 versus 24. None of them reach for the record books. Every single one reaches for the same word: historic. Andre Agassi has 8 Grand Slams. He is one of the 6 men in the Open era to complete the career Grand Slam. When he speaks about a player, really speaks. The tennis world listens differently. What he said about Alcaraz's movement has never been said about any modern player in the sport. He's like a flying saucer versus F-15S. Everybody's flying a plane, he's changing altitudes, reversing, and his speed doesn't diminish. Every elite player on tour slows down on natural surfaces. Grass demands caution, clay demands patience, and both punish overcommitment. Agassi's point is specific and technical. Alcaraz's court coverage does not drop on either surface the way every other fast player's does. His first step out of a slide, his recovery from a ball caught cold on center court at Wimbledon, his acceleration from a dead stop, none of it diminishes, at any point, on any surface. Opponents spend entire matches searching for the shot that finally pins him back permanently. According to Agassi, that shot doesn't exist. What makes the quote genuinely unsettling for the rest of the tour is the sentence that followed it. He's still so raw. He has so much more upside from a standpoint of longevity. 7 Grand Slams. Youngest career Grand Slam in history. According to the man who has seen everything this sport has produced, he hasn't peaked yet. Roddick didn't hedge after Melbourne, didn't qualify, didn't reach for the usual caveats about needing more time and more data before making comparisons. Carlos Alcaraz is now squarely in the company of Edberg, Becker, Wilander, Lendl, Connors, McEnroe, Agassi, at 22 years old. Read that list again slowly. Stefan Edberg, Boris Becker, Mats Wilander, Ivan Lendl, Jimmy Connors, John McEnroe, Andre Agassi. Between them, dozens of Grand Slams, decades of dominance, careers that defined entire eras of the sport. Roddick placed a 22-year-old in that room, not as a future possibility, not as a projection, as a current fact. One analyst writing for Yahoo Sports after the final reached for a comparison that stopped the tennis conversation entirely. We are watching Michael Jordan in 1992, Tiger Woods in 2000. Those weren't just great athletes. They were playing versions of their sports that had never existed before, versions that made elite opponents look ordinary without the opponents doing anything differently. That is the same language now being used about Alcaraz, not by fans, by the people who built the sport. Here is what tends to get lost in the noise around Melbourne. The performance itself deserves context. Djokovic was magnificent. He won the first set 6-2, serving at 93% on first serves, deploying a forehand widely considered one of the greatest in the history of the game. His semi-final against Sinner was described by John McEnroe as one of the finest matches Djokovic had ever played. He arrived in the final at 38 years old, having already beaten the world number 2 in 5 brutal sets 2 nights earlier. He did everything right, for a set and a half. Then Alcaraz recalibrated, silently, without changing his body language by a single degree, and won 3 sets in a row, each one more dominant than the last. A 10-time champion on his own court, the greatest player in history by any statistical measure, dismantled without a visible adjustment from the other side of the net. Crossing the net afterward, Djokovic chose his words carefully. What you've been doing, the best words to describe it is historic, legendary. Then, addressing the Melbourne crowd, the same crowd that had roared for him across 2 decades, he said something nobody anticipated. Rather than his usual "see you next year," he told them, "God knows what happens tomorrow, let alone in 6 months or 12 months." 5 words, "It's been a great ride," sent the tennis world into immediate speculation. Jim Courier said on Channel 9 it felt that way. Patrick McEnroe on ESPN asked whether the end might be near. Whether those words confirmed a retirement or not, what they confirmed beyond any doubt was this. The man who owns 24 Grand Slams stood across from 7 and chose the word legendary. So back to the problem, the one that makes this genuinely uncomfortable for anyone trying to crown Alcaraz right now. 24 Grand Slams aren't just a number, they represent a standard of sustained excellence across 20 years that no player in history has matched. Federer's 20 took 20 years, Nadal's 22 took 19. Alcaraz has 7 in 4 years. But 4 years is 4 years. The GOAT conversation historically has never been decided at 22. Rick Maxey acknowledged this in his own way. Even while heaping praise on Alcaraz, the framing was about the present. Carlos has raised the bar and jolted the sport like no other. Raised the bar. Not rewritten history, not yet. A Yahoo Sports analysis put it cleanly. Djokovic may currently stand as the greatest and most accomplished tennis player of all time, but Alcaraz is the most gifted person who has ever held a racket. Most gifted, not greatest. The distinction matters. Because what the legends are saying, all of them unanimously, is that the ceiling above Alcaraz is higher than anything they have ever seen. The GOAT title still belongs to Djokovic by the numbers. What belongs to Alcaraz is something harder to quantify and, in some ways, more important. The unanimous belief from the people who know this sport best that the ceiling above him has no visible limit. At 22, Djokovic had 1 Grand Slam. At this rate, Alcaraz could have 15 by the time he reaches Djokovic's current age. That isn't hype, that is just the mathematics of what is currently happening on court. 12 wins from 12 matches to open 2026 Australian Open, then straight to Doha, ATP 500, where he defeated Arthur Fils 6-2, 6-1 in under an hour without dropping a set all week. No dip in intensity, no emotional hangover after completing the career Grand Slam. Just controlled, relentless, suffocating tennis from the first ball. Next stop, Indian Wells, where he is a 2-time defending champion. Then the clay season. Then Roland Garros, where he has won twice and where the calendar Grand Slam conversation begins in earnest. Asked directly after Melbourne whether a calendar slam was the goal, Alcaraz answered without flinching. It's going to be a big challenge. I just want it to be one at a time. Next one is French Open. I have great memories there. I don't want to put myself in a position of pressure, but it's going to be great. Controlled. Calm. Already thinking about the next one before the confetti from the last had settled. That mindset, combined with what Agassi described as his raw upside, what Roddick described as his all-time company, and what the man with 24 Grand Slams described with the word legendary, is what makes the record question feel almost temporary. The numbers will come. The only real debate is how many and how fast. So here is where we land. 7 Grand Slams versus 24. A 22-year-old versus 2 decades of sustained dominance. The most gifted player anyone has ever seen versus the most accomplished player the sport has ever produced. Both things are true at the same time. That is what makes this the most fascinating debate tennis has had in a generation. Djokovic owns the records. Nobody's taking them. Federer's 20, Nadal's 22, Djokovic's 24. Those numbers are permanent. They represent careers built across decades of sacrifice, injury, and consistency that no one in the sport has matched. Yet every legend who built those records, Agassi, Roddick, Navratilova, Billie Jean King, Nadal watching from the stands, is now pointing at a 22-year-old and reaching for words like historic, like legendary, like nothing they have ever seen before, not in 10 years, not if everything goes right now, at 22, with a new coach, a 12-match winning streak, a career Grand Slam already in the cabinet. The verdict came from his own court, the man who has spent 2 decades defining what greatness looks like in this sport, crossed the net, looked Carlos Alcaraz in the eye, and handed him that word personally. Maybe the GOAT debate doesn't end with a number. Maybe it ends with a moment, when the previous GOAT tells you what you are, on the court where he built his legend, in front of the crowd that loved him longest. That moment already happened. Now it's your turn. Does Alcaraz need to break Djokovic's records to be considered the greatest ever, or have the legends already made the verdict clear? Drop your answer in the comments right now, because this debate has no clean answer, and we want to know exactly where you stand.